This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor John Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
There are so many things that we just have in our mind and we assume that they're correct because we've heard them 100,000 times. We got to get rid of all those myths. If you've done a great job saving, you'd be surprised what you can accomplish when you use the right strategies. Most people just aren't aware of them.
You've worked hard your whole life to earn and save. Now you need a plan to make that money work hard for you.
So people that have sacrificed opportunities to spend money, they sacrificed by putting the money in that 401k. They've sacrificed by putting that money in a 529 college plan for their grandkids. Those types of sacrifices should go rewarded in the long run.
John is here to help you find solutions for your retirement.
All right, now, I don't know how much into this next nugget of info you're going to be. You know, you're a historian type. You like history, but how much about the Titanic, historically speaking, are you familiar with?
The movie with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Not just the
Zero.
movie, the entire idea of you know, the truths that may or may not have been properly displayed through this movie.
Well, if it's got pan flute, then I'm in.
Listen, anytime I can get a flautist and work our flautist into our show.
There's just something about the pan flute that should make us all feel a bit better.
What's going to make you feel a little bit sad is that Titanic is actually celebrating its 25th anniversary.
Has it really been that long?
That's how long it's been since that movie first came out.
Oh, since the movie.
Yes.
Not the actual Titanic.
No. The
scene.
Titanic was 1914.
Yeah, it's been a few more years.
So, and the way that they are celebrating it is with National Geographic. Director James Cameron is testing out the question that has been looming in the heads of Titanic fans across the nations for the last 25 years.
Why didn't Rose move over?
Could Leo and Kate both fit on the door? Yes.
That's it.
They are exploring this in this National Geographic documentary.
See?
See?
I'm just saying.
It's been something that has been actually to the point where James Cameron has admitted that if he could go back and change anything, he would have solved this debate from the beginning by having done the math himself. They figured out it could have been done, but only with the knowledge, like they would have had to have the science knowledge right there floating in the ocean of you can both lay on it and you got to let your legs dangle in the water. It wouldn't have happened.
If it had had a happy ending, would people have loved it so much? And I think not. It's like Romeo and Juliet.
That's right.
It's like all of those stories, those allegories and those Greek tragedies.
The tragedy had to be there.
Sometimes you have to have the tragedy.
Yep.
You have to have the angst. You have to have that problem that subsides to the point to where, man, you're just lucky you get out of that situation.
All right, well, here's where you come into play as far as angst and helping us be lucky enough to get out of certain situations. Because when it comes to the questions that we have been stewing over for much longer than 25 years and our money and how to be better prepared for it and the future, the obvious question about tax planning is a huge part of that conversation, John.
It is.
And the whole idea of whether someone, this is kind of like could they both fit on the door? Will somebody have to pay higher tax rates now or in the future? And in those years when they really need to not be, they need more of that money because they're not going to be having that work income in retirement.
Sure.
So we know that the tax cuts that were passed in 2017, those are due to expire in 2026.
Yes.
This is where you come into play. We've got 3 years till 2026. What options are you recommending to the folks in your office? And furthermore, how do we figure out what works for us, what's right for us?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. If you look at the way that financial planning should be evolving, now I'm not going to say it has evolved, because I know that there's a lot of my contemporaries that still don't pay attention to the tax angle. It is unbelievably important in my office that if you want to spend a certain amount of money in retirement, that you can do that after taxation. Does it do any good? So if you said, John, I need $5,000 a month to do the things I need to do.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, that sounds great. So here's $5,000 a month. But then you realize that's not including taxes. So that $5,000 a month, you're really only spending about $4,000 a month that you have access to. Guys, that's $12,000 a year that you don't have money for it. If you think about it, maybe that's our mortgage. Maybe that's our healthcare costs. Maybe that's a car payment or a travel budget, right? Taxes make an unbelievable big difference when we're looking at things. And so when we're looking at what can we do for taxation, there are two basically mindsets that I've found, Heather, over the years.
Okay.
There's one group of people, and I get it, this is the way we've been trained. One group of people says, I want to pay the least amount of taxes today.
Right.
John, John, I want to pay the least amount of taxes today. Perfect. No problem. That can absolutely be accomplished. You'd be amazed at how lean you can be when it comes to taxes if you're worried about today. But what I would rather people say, hey, I get it, John. I might pay a couple more pennies today, but I really want to have a substantially larger amount in the future that the government can't touch. Right?
Yep.
And that means that we may be paying a couple more dollars in taxes today to offset a future tax bill that, frankly, guys, it's not going down. I don't care what anyone says. Of course, as we know, in 2026, the tax law goes back to its old form, which means every one of us will potentially be paying more taxes just because we go back to the old system. Now, part number 2. The government's broke.
Yep.
I have said this to the top of my megaphone's volume level for roughly the last decade. The government is broke. We don't have money for bailouts. We don't have money for anything. As a matter of fact, this past week, when President Biden said he was going to give all this money back, or he was going to promise these folks they'd get their money back from Silicon Valley Bank, Janet Yellen, his own Treasury Secretary, said, we don't have money for that. So this is exactly how it happens, right? And this is what happens in households where there's a couple that are fighting, they're duking it out because we don't have enough money. And often it's because there's those expenses we just didn't calculate. Taxes is one of the biggest ones. So what we have done in our office is we've broken down taxes 2 different ways. I want people to see, hey, if you want to be efficient today, here's the least amount of taxes that you're ever going to pay. And who is that good for? It's good for the people that want that last check to bounce to the undertaker. And let's just be honest. They said, John, every dollar I've put in, I want to get every dollar out for me to use. I don't care anything about the future generations. I don't care anything about a surviving spouse. It's not that it's not important. It's just not important to me. And that is one set of tax boundaries and loopholes that we can use.
Okay.
There's the second one, though, Heather. The second one says, hey, I've done a pretty good job of saving money. I've saved $500,000. I've saved $1 million. I've saved $5 million. I've saved $30 million. I'm not so worried about money today because I've got plenty of money. I want to make sure that, when I need this money, Uncle Sam's not going to try to take half of it or more away from me.
Yep.
Or that all the work that I put in, my heirs aren't giving 3/4 of it up to the government.
Yeah.
And that is a very different tax angle. So, Heather, I have an example of a gentleman who's been a client for a long time. Wonderful guy.
Yeah.
Retired from UPS, forced retirement because he was a pilot. And he had to go out at age 60. Perfectly acceptable. He loved it. He had done a great job saving, saved tons of money. But we were looking at his accounts, and he straight up told me, he said, John, there's no way I'm going to use all this money. I've paid off the house. I'm doing, private air lessons. I'm doing all these things that I love to do. We're traveling more than we have in forever. There's no way I'm going to spend all this money. Can we do something differently? I'm like, well, absolutely. What do we want to try to figure out? He goes, well, we have a lot of money, and he'd saved about $2.3 million. His wife was about 1.5 years younger. And he said, hey, I got this $425,000 IRA. It's a traditional IRA. I don't think I'm going to need that money. So we immediately put that through a different test. We tried to figure out what was going to be best for him. Would it be better for him to go ahead and convert that to Roth? Would it be better for him to just go ahead and pull that money out and put it somewhere else? Would it be better for him to gift that money? Would it be better to create a trust with those dollars? What would be best for him?
Yeah.
And amazingly, we did the analysis that ran through every one of those models right in front so we could all stack them side by side by side. And what we came up with, Heather, and what we realized was if he left that account alone, that $425,000, if we assumed over the next 15, 20 years that he was going to average about 6.5% on the money, which is pretty conservative, it'd be a balanced portfolio style, he was going to end up paying on that IRA that he does not need to use. He was going to pay about $463,000 in taxes over the course of his lifetime.
That's the amount of money he has in there right now.
That's exactly right. He was actually going to pay slightly more than that $425,000 that he had in that account today.
I mean, that makes total sense.
Crazy when you look at that. Crazy when you look at that. So what is the alternative?
Okay.
Well, the alternative was he could immediately convert that to a Roth.
Yeah.
And he'd only pay about $114,000 in taxes. Okay.
Okay.
Now, here's my point to that, though. I don't think that that's very efficient. And our software system says, absolutely, that's not efficient. But what can we do to get close to modeling that? Because here's the crazy thing, Heather. If his kids inherited this money with no taxation whatsoever, that's kind of what he wanted to do. That's his whole idea. If his wife needed the money once he was gone, he wanted to make sure she had access. But really, it was to go to the next generation. Okay. But what we did is we did one more step and we said, okay, why don't we exploit the current tax code the way that it is? Why don't we take, not in one time, not in one fell swoop, convert all this? Why don't we stretch this out over a 7-year period? We're going to make equal amounts go, and we're going to do one of two things. We're either going to go to a Roth conversion for a portion of it, or, Heather, we're going to use a wealth replacement trust. And this is a huge difference for most people. Because a lot of people say, well, John, I think that I'd be better off just staying in the traditional, because when you pay taxes to convert that Roth, you got to pay taxes in that year, and you're never going to get that money back. True. But if you use a wealth replacement trust in this situation along with a Roth, here's what we came out with. Heather, he was going to be able to take that $425,000 IRA, convert that over a 7-year period, either to a Roth or to a family wealth replacement trust. And amazingly enough, here's the crazy thing. His tax bill was going to save almost $361,000 versus the government plan. And on top of that, if he were to pass away at, let's say, age 90, it was going to increase the amount to his family by an additional $861,000. Wow. Why? Because of the Family Wealth Replacement Trust. Amazingly. So what we did is we found a way. How can we get that money, pay the least amount of taxes in the future, make sure it goes to the next generation, avoid as many taxes as we can, but also replace that income we would have lost by doing only Roth conversions. See, guys, these are the things that are available if we really understand what we want our money to accomplish. Had we just left it in that traditional IRA, would he have been fine? Of course. But was he being efficient? No. Was he being the best he could have been? No. And the smile on his face as we told him, yeah, you're basically going to give $300,000 left to Uncle Sam, an additional almost $850,000 to your family, and we don't have to worry about any of that other nonsense. He was so elated that we came up with this plan. Whether you don't want to pay taxes now or later, the point is where are you going to be in the best position?
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with John Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with John and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting retirementsolutionradio.com. Be sure to listen to John's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Inc. is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Inc. is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Inc. is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. It does not provide legal or tax advice. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Jonathan Hicks, insurance license number 548962.